Hi everyone, and welcome to Preventing Injuries. This is a class about preventing injuries so that you can stay in the game and be jumping for joy injury-free. I am Dr. Jeanette DeWitt. I am a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, and a fitness coach. And today we're going to talk about 8 tips that you can do to prevent injuries. I welcome everyone here. You are also welcome to make comments. I should be able to see those comments in the chat. So if you have questions, please feel free to submit your questions or your comments or feedback, any of that in the comment section, and I welcome you to do that. Our first tip in our 8 tips to preventing injuries is actually going to focus on adequate nutrition. And the reason nutrition is so important to our overall health as well as preventing injuries is because our body needs the fuel to keep us going. So I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on nutrition today, but one of the key things to nutrition is going to be hydration. Athletes definitely need to be very well hydrated for competition, and we in general through the course of our day need to have good hydration. What is the correct amount of hydration? The correct amount that we should be getting is half of our body weight in ounces. So if you take a 100-pound student athlete, they should be getting at least 50 ounces of water per day. That's not counting athletic competition or sports practices. So half your body weight in ounces is the minimum requirement. Now there are other people who have some complicated disorders, kidney issues, things like that, that really have to watch how much intake they take in with fluids, but we're not talking about that in today's conversation. We're talking about a student athlete or an exercising adult who needs to stay properly hydrated to prevent injuries. One of the other things that we want to talk about is food, high quality food sources. Now there's a lot of diet programs out there, a lot of fad diets out there. I really don't recommend any diet that is going to eliminate a food group. And when we think of carbohydrates, we think of carbohydrates as causing weight gain, and that's really a myth. Carbohydrates that are high quality, have good fiber and good whole grains in them are not going to cause weight gain. You actually need carbs to give you that primary source of energy. And student athletes need a high amount of carbs because they're burning that energy and they need to replenish that so that they can sustain a level of performance. So just typically a general ratio for a student athlete or an exercising adult who's highly competitive, we want about 60 to 70% of carbohydrates in that diet, 60 to 70%. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, wow, that's really high, but remember, these athletes are burning that energy, so they have to replenish it so they don't run out of energy, which slows them down, fatigues them, and doesn't allow their muscles to replenish and restore. So carbohydrates should be at about 60 to 70%. Protein should be about 15 to 20%, and good quality fats like your omega-3s from salmon or your fish oil, your olive oils, you need about 15 to 20% of quality oils too. So just to recap on the nutrition, you want 60 to 70% of good quality carbs, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, 60 to 70% of carbs, 15 to 20% of high quality protein, and 15 to 20% of good quality oils. So hydration and nutrition play a big factor in keeping an athlete and keeping ourselves well, injury-free, Now another question that comes across with nutrition is supplements. Should I give supplements to my kids? Should I take supplements for myself? And I would say supplements are there to supplement your diet. They're not to replace food. So if you're missing out on some key nutrients, that's where I would add and recommend some supplements. So step number 1 or tip number 1 was good nutrition, which included hydration. Now the second tip is going to be adequate sleep. I don't know about you, but I see a lot of people walking around without very good sleep. Here are some general guidelines on sleep. Adults need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. Teenagers need 8 to 10 hours of sleep. And school-age children need 9 to 11 hours of sleep. This is regardless of any type of sports activity. We have to get adequate sleep. And why is sleep so important? Well, when we are sleeping and we're getting good quality restful sleep and the right amount of sleep, our body is able to shut down mentally and physically so that it can repair itself from the physical and mental stresses that we encounter on a daily basis. Getting adequate sleep is your body's restoration and repair process. It is crucial for athletes to get a good quality amount of sleep, because if they're not able to repair the muscle tissue that they stressed, if they're not able to restore their mind and kind of rejuvenate, then they get burned out, and they also lead to injuries because they're not able to focus and stay on task with good technique and good form. So the step number 2, or tip number 2, was making sure we get adequate sleep so we can rest and recover from the demands that we place on our body every day. I mentioned correct technique and correct form, and that is the 3rd tip. We must be instructing our student athletes, and the coaches must be instructing the student athletes, and the athletes must be listening to those coaches to use correct technique and form. And a perfect example of this is knee injuries. Knee injuries are often caused by really poor form with squatting and lunging. And when you squat, you really want to have your knees over the second toe, and you don't want the knees crossing forward across the toes. When you put your knees ahead of your toes and you can't see your toes when you do a squat, you're really putting a lot of stress on the knee joint, and that creates pain. And for the young athlete, this can result in some patellofemoral syndrome, Osgood-Schlatter syndrome, or Osgood-Schlatter's disease, and just poor knee tracking and pain. So using good form and good technique is crucial to preventing injuries. For the upper body, I see a lot of kind of weird things happening in the gym. People taking the lat pull down and putting the bar behind their neck. That's awful. So we don't want to teach things like that. The other thing is just good technique coming out of a piece of equipment. I actually saw a girl get a concussion from the lat pull bar, or the bar itself. Their friend picked it up, the bar swiveled around, clumped her in the head, and now she had a concussion. So just good technique, watching your surroundings and being aware of what's going on around you can help to prevent injuries when you're in the weight room and when you're doing skills at practice. Now, one of the other things we talked about with the lat pull down is knowing what your equipment is, knowing your environment. And safety equipment is the 4th tip in preventing injuries. I'm going to talk a little bit about shoe wear. Now, I don't endorse any type of shoe wear or shoe products, but I will say that shoes are designed today for sport-specific skills. For example, a running shoe should never be worn on a court-type sport. So tennis, basketball, volleyball, they should never be played in running shoes. And the reason is running shoes are meant to propel somebody forward. There's no stability with cutting or side-to-side movement. And so I see a lot of ankle injuries and knee injuries occur because of poor shoe wear, where the person wasn't really set up to succeed because their shoes didn't give them the proper support. So when we talk about shoes, we want to talk about how you have a good supportive shoe. Again, I don't endorse any type of product. This is my daughter's soccer cleat that she actually wears for lacrosse. And you want a shoe that has a good heel counter. That means you can't squeeze the thing together. If you can squeeze it and the two sides pinch, that is not a good quality shoe, and it's not going to support the back of the heel or the ankle. The other thing you want is something that's kind of rigid. You don't want something super flexible where you don't have any arch support. And then you don't want to have such a narrow toe box right up here, or you're going to get the toes all squished together. So good shoe wear is really important, because when the foot hits the ground, it's the first thing that will shock and take the shock absorbency off the knee, the hip, and the back. So proper shoe wear, preferably new shoes per student athlete. Sharing shoes can lead to all kinds of foot like fungus issues and diseases from sweaty feet. Wet shoes from the soccer field or the football field just sets the athlete up for poor foot hygiene. And when you share shoes, the shoe actually can get the imprint of the person wearing it. So when you go to share shoes, if that other person before you had a foot deformity, your foot is going to be placed into that, and it might throw off your balance and your ability to react. So new shoes for each new person is recommended. Another thing about shoe wear, a simple thing, very popular flip-flops, or these are shower shoes too. Nobody should be going barefoot in the locker room. So that's a breeding ground for foot fungus and just foot issues in general. So shower shoes, no bare feet in the locker room. Will help protect your athlete's feet. Helmet safety is another one. Again, this is my daughter's lacrosse helmet. Always inspect the helmet before each practice and before each game. So whether it's the helmet or really any other type of protective equipment like padding, soccer shin guards, shoelaces, make sure they're not frayed or they're going to rip. But helmet safety is a big one, making sure that everything is connected the way it should be, and when it fits properly, like the padding inside is fitting properly against the face, and making sure there's good contact so that the helmet's not sliding around. Helmets are there for a reason. They're to help decrease impact from a direct blow, whether it's to the ground or from a ball or from another player. So helmet safety is crucial and helping to reduce head injuries as well as eye and mouth injuries. The mouth guard, there's lots of different brands out there. You want one that's customized to your athlete and molded and then protected in a case so that it's not picking up all kinds of debris and things associated with it. So protective gear is key to keeping your athlete healthy. And it's not the only thing we talk about for safety. We look at equipment too, and making sure that weight machines are working properly, dumbbells are cracked or haven't been dented in, stability balls, things like that, exercise balls aren't rolling over sharp objects. And then if you look at a field or a court, inspecting that field before practice and games, inspecting the court, making sure there's no wet spots. Coaches and the players should be walking a course at the cross country, should be walking a course on the track or the field or the court, because when you walk that, you start to see, okay, is there a change in terrain? Is it unlevel here? Is it wet? Is it slippery? These are all things that can set an athlete up to fail in their sport when it could have been prevented, because you know that this spot is a little bit more treacherous on this side of the field, depending what the weather is. So looking at all those things, if you have a certified athletic trainer on staff, that person will really be looking at a lot of these things as well, and keeping the coaches informed and letting the players know that if there's a troublesome spot on the court or the field, that the players need to be aware of that as well. Another thing is environment conditions. If you play an outdoor sport, you're playing in all kinds of conditions, so making sure you're dressed appropriately is key. And I go back to that water thing. A lot of people think when it's cold outside they don't get as dehydrated, but you can get dehydrated in cold weather. Making sure that when you're dealing with elements like intense humidity, intense sun, you're playing a noon game and the sun's directly overhead, making sure you have the sunblock and the proper attire on so that you can protect your skin. Same thing with wind. A lot of runners get wind chafing on their hands and on their face, tips of their nose, their ears. So again, making sure you have that protective clothing to basically brave the elements. Really, if there's lightning and thunder, everybody should be escorted inside to a safer place. You can't be playing in the lightning. You can't be out running in a lightning and a thunderstorm. Our fifth tip to preventing injury is self-massage techniques. Now, a lot of people wait until they have aches and pains to actually do self-massage or go get a massage. But really, you can do self-massage techniques to help prevent muscle tightness, which allows your muscles to respond better to stretching and strengthening, and also just recover better from the intense practice or a really competitive game that might have even gone into overtime. So some equipment or tools that you can have handy at home. And I have some YouTube videos if anybody's interested. I actually take people through this in detail on how to use the runner stick here. This is a really nice flexible stick. It helps decrease muscle soreness. All of the self-massage techniques, the reason for doing them is to increase blood flow to the area, to reduce muscle soreness, to reduce muscle spasming, and also just to prepare the muscles for movement. So it's a really good thing to do self-massage techniques prior to a practice and then again afterwards. If you have the stick as an option, there's a lot of people are familiar with the foam roller. You can roll on this to work out muscle tightness. And the back buddy is a great trigger point. So if you have a spot, you can use that to kind of push down into the upper trapezius region. You can also loop it around and use it on the back. And it's nice and ergonomic, so you're not like trying to reach and strain to do that. Another one is a tennis ball. This works great. You have a pitcher. The baseball might be a little hard, but you could use a tennis ball. So your throwing sports, it helps to loosen up these forearm muscles prior to throwing. You can also put this against the wall and lean against it and kind of roll on that as well. So self-massage techniques are really good for increasing circulation, stimulating the muscle, breaking up any tightness that you may have. You might not have pain, but it's good to do some of these self-massage techniques to keep your muscles loose before a practice or a game. And then it's good to do it afterwards to loosen up anything that got tight or overworked in the course of the competition. Tip number 6 is topical analgesics. Now, a lot of people use different over-the-counter products. I use about 4 different ones in my office. I use Deep Blue by doTERRA. I use Sombra Cool Therapy, Sombra Warm Therapy, and then a very common one is BioFreeze. All of these are really good products. There are others. These are just the ones I happen to use in my office. And what I like about topical analgesics is they help to kind of calm down and provide temporary relief. So if you have some aches and pains or you're a little bit tight, a topical analgesic cream can help to loosen that up and basically make your symptoms go away. There's nothing wrong with using them. The key I have to say, if you're continuing to have aches and pains anywhere beyond 8 days, then that's probably not going away on your own or on its own, and you're going to want to seek a physical therapist like myself, or if it's more severe, even a physician consult. Never hurts to touch base with someone like myself for physical therapy, because we might be able to direct you to where you might need to go if we aren't the first option. So That's topical analgesics for you. And then tip number 7 is flexibility training. Now, of all the tips I'm going to give you, this is the one that people never seem to have time for. And I say that because what do I hear from coaches? You know, I'm a coach myself. I'm an assistant coach with cross country and track, and we run out of time as coaches at practice, and we'll say, oh, go stretch on your own, stretch on your own. And I'm telling you, it doesn't happen. But the reason flexibility training is so key, the reason stretching is so important, is when you've worked your muscles really hard at a tough practice or a really competitive game, those muscles are compressed and they're shortened from contracting and contracting and contracting, and you need to stretch them back out so that they can fully repair and recover. Flexibility training is important because it helps you have full range of motion, it helps your muscles glide, it helps your nerves glide alongside the muscles, and it just helps overall relax your body and elongate back out. In today's society, our student athletes are in a chair and in a desk 6 to 8 hours a day, and they get up and they change classes, but for the most part they're sitting. And then what happens is we ask them, after they've done that for 8 hours a day, is to go perform a sport where they're stretching to get a rebound, or they're going side to side to get, you know, to make the next skill, or to cut on a field. These are quick movements, but they've been sedentary all day. So we need to make sure they're getting good flexibility training, and there's a couple ways to do that. Before a practice, we should have dynamic flexibility exercises. We don't want to do a ton of static stretching before a practice. We want to use the muscles and warm them up in the way that we want to use them for our sport. So for example, a track athlete or a cross-country runner, they might do some dynamic warm-ups where they're skipping, they're hopping, they're kind of bounding like that, and they're working those running muscles. Versus a soccer player, they might be doing dynamic stretching, that is your cariokas, your side-to-sides, and it's a little bit more sport-specific with lateral movements because they need to stretch those hip and those adductor groin muscles to prepare for those type of movements on the field. Same thing with basketball, same thing with lacrosse and hockey, where you got some side-to-side motion as well as forward and back. After practice, we want to do more static stretching, where we're actually holding the muscle. For example, you're doing a quadricep stretch and holding the muscle and letting that muscle elongate back out in a controlled hold so that it can basically rebound back to its proper position and length. So stretching helps to restore movement patterns. It helps to elongate the muscle so that it can be prepared to do more work later. The final tip is strengthening. And strengthening is obviously crucial to being strong, having good endurance, and having the power that someone needs to perform in their sport. And so there's different types of strengthening, and different types of strengthening can be performed depending on where an athlete is in their season. For example, there's a concept called periodization. And periodization is about splitting up a season into cycles. So the first cycle might be preseason. And preseason, we do a lot of plyometric or jump training, a lot of quickness, a lot of agility training. And the strength training really revolves around quickness, speed, and agility to prepare an athlete for what they need to do in the course of their season and be able to react quickly to what may be coming at them. In season, we do less strengthening, we do more sport-specific skills, and we do less strengthening as far as in the weight room, sometimes only 1 to 2 times a week, especially if there's multiple games within a week. And the reason is because in season is not the time to be building a lot of strength. It's the time to maintain the strength so that you still have the strength and endurance later on in the season when you're at your peak and it's tournament time. Now, after the in season is the off season. The off season is typically only about 8 weeks, but this is the time where we want to do strength training to those areas that got weak because of in season, or maybe got a little overused or injured, and we're trying to recover with strength training and core stabilization so that we can kind of mend anything that were overused or kind of achy and just irritating by the end of the course of a season. And then our last periodization cycle would be the off season. And the off season is where you really want to kind of hit that strengthening up to 3, 4, maybe even 5 times a week, where you're building strength, you're building power, and you're building the strength of endurance to really get ready for that preseason, and then you start all over again. So cycling an athlete's program like that really helps reduce injuries because you have a focus on why you're strengthening based on where they are in their season. Those are my 8 tips. I'll recap those a little bit. There's adequate nutrition and hydration is tip number 1. Then we talked about adequate sleep. We talked about using correct technique and form, using proper safety equipment and checking your environment, self-massage techniques, analgesics, and flexibility training and strength training. These are the 8 tips to preventing injuries. I hope this has been helpful. I hope too that if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the chat. If you want to know where the resources that I use or the products, they are on my website at www.dewittptwellness.com. It's under the resources page. You can see the products that I use at my clinic. And then if you have other questions, you can always email me at Jeanette@dewittptwellness.com. I hope that you enjoyed today's class. Please feel free to share it and pass it along to other people you might find this beneficial. And if nobody has any questions, then I hope you all have a great day. I'm seeing 3 people. Hi, Misty. Hi, Deepu. I think I spelled that correctly. Sorry, or pronounced it. And Coach Vicky, thank you for joining today. I appreciate it very much. Like I said, go ahead and tag a friend in this and pass it along. They'll be able to watch it on the replay. And I appreciate you joining in today, and have a great day.